Well, hello everybody. Pastor Joel here with you one more time for the past days with Pastor Joel. So glad that you are with me again, and we are in a series on the book of Revelation, and we're going to get right into the content pretty quickly here, but just want to remind you of a couple things. First of all, thank you to those who are sharing these videos. Again, I think it's important to get this message of what I'm more and more commonly calling the completed gospel, as close as across the street and as far as across the world. And if these videos can help with that, all glory to God. So like, share, subscribe. I'm trying to do these videos in a way that not only teaches you, but also will equip you to teach others. So I'd love it to get some feedback from you in the comments. Maybe if I've had an idea or two on different videos that you've tried as a way to present preterism, fulfilled eschatology to other people. How has that worked? What's worked? What doesn't work? Sometimes we can feel like nothing works, but we just need to keep trying to get this message out there, because some people will listen. I'll give you a quick example of that, because this was really cool. Occasionally, I will make comments on pretty popular videos from different pastors, where sometimes there's hundreds of comments. And a lot of times I don't expect the actual pastor to see them or their staff, but my hope is that maybe somebody else in those comment thread will see them. And often I don't hear anything back. Sometimes I do. So the other day, I made a comment on Pastor Mark Driscoll's. He had like an 8-minute video. I may talk a little bit about what he's teaching on. I've really learned so much from him, but he's just, again, so disappointingly off on what he's saying. But at any rate, I made a comment that the last times actually were not when he was saying that they were, and so forth, and mentioned some texts in the New Testament that placed those past days, or the last days rather, in the first century. And lo and behold, this person commented to me and wanted to learn a little bit more. So I connected her to my channel, and she made another comment and just said, wow, I've never heard any of this before. So there are people like that out there that just may listen. All right, so thank you again for doing that. Also, if you left a testimony with me, I will get to those. I think just because I've got several in, I may make a separate video and do those rather than kind of interspersing them throughout the videos as I had thought to do initially. We'll see. But at any rate, I haven't forgotten about you. So we're in video number 8, I believe. Is that right? Let me just check here. Let's see. 5, 6, 7. I think it should be video number 8. If you haven't listened to these other videos on Revelation, I would recommend you go back and do that so you have some context. But starting in video 5, we started looking at some of what I'm calling the characters of Revelation, and sort of the, who are the major players. So I did 2 videos on Jesus, did another one on the church. The last one was on the whore of Babylon, really important one, because I really think if we identify the whore of Babylon correctly, it changes so much of how we understand not only eschatology, not only the book of Revelation, but all of the scripture. It's that important. We're going to look today at the beast, or actually the beasts plural. Did you know there are 2 beasts? Again, my listeners are the brightest people on the planet, so you probably did, but not everyone does. And so get out your Bible, you can follow along, and then you can write down these references for further study on your own. We get to these beasts in chapter 13. And just want to mention that though not everyone agrees on who these 2 beasts represent, there's much agreement on the sea beast from the fulfilled prophecy of you. Revelation 13 and verse 2 says this, "And I saw a beast coming out of the sea. It had 10 horns and 7 heads, with 10 crowns on its horns, and on each head a blasphemous name." Now this verse is in reference to the first beast, or the sea beast. Let's next consider Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. "Then I saw a second beast coming out of the earth. It had 2 horns like a lamb, but it spoke like a dragon. It exercised all the authority of the first beast on its behalf, and made the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast, whose fatal wound had been healed." Again, that's Revelation 3:11. This is obviously the second beast, or the land beast. So I just wanted to point that out, that there are 2 beasts, the sea beast and then the land beast. Now in the Bible, the sea often represents the abyss, sort of something mysterious, something ominous. And it's noteworthy that in Revelation, there is no sea, but there is a river of life. Now, again, from those who want to take everything in the Bible in sort of a wooden literal sense, if you're not familiar with that term, it just means like a strict, unmalleable literal sense. All kinds of crazy ideas have come that because most of the time those people also believe in a literal, cubed city that comes down out of the sky. And I'm not meaning to mock it, because I believed it at one point. But it's a little funny now. It seems more like a cartoon than anything real from the perspective I now hold, which I believe is a lot more sticks to the text, for sure. But at any rate, so they'll read that and think, no sea, so there's no water. There's no water in the New Jerusalem. And it's like, no. This is not, that's not the point. The point is that the sea, again, was a symbol, but there is a river of life, which, of course, this idea of this life goes all the way back to Genesis and the garden and so forth, the tree of life, and we don't have time to get into all that in this video. Now, again, you'll notice that the second beast worked on behalf of the first beast, even making people worship the first beast. Now, my understanding of Revelation, based on the time statements soon, near, at the door, we've looked at all that. Whoever these beasts are, they are not anybody we need to be worried about today. They were people in the first century. Now, as mentioned previously, some people with a futurist point of view that would say most of, or perhaps all of Revelation hasn't happened yet, they end up combining the beast, the man of lawlessness, who's also called the man of sin in different translations, and the Antichrist into this single horrific figure. Do you know that Antichrist is never mentioned one time in the entire book of Revelation? Not once. A lot of people are just surprised by that. And they'll say, well, again, it's this kind of conflated, man of sin, man of lawlessness, beast. Why? Where is the biblical evidence for that? And so we need to be so careful about that. Another pastor sometimes that I've appreciated some of what he says, but is so far off on this stuff and has a sort of, unfortunately, in my view, a huge platform in terms of teaching this anyway, is Jack Hibbs. And Jack Hibbs recently, he's a very well-known Calvary Chapel preacher, and he's been preaching a sermon series. I think he did 3 messages on the Antichrist, and he taught Antichrist from 2 Thessalonians, where Antichrist is never even mentioned. I mean, if you're going to mention Antichrist, could you at least please use books of the Bible that mention Antichrist? I mean, is that too much to ask? There is only one place. Now, I'm going to cover Antichrist as part of this Revelation series, even though he's not mentioned in Revelation, because often people put the Antichrist in Revelation. So I'm going to tell you what books, only 2, that Antichrist is actually mentioned in specifically, and we'll look at that. But at any rate, it's just unfortunate that these things happen. It's careless. I think most of the time it's done ignorantly, but sometimes purposefully. These guys that will write books or do YouTube videos or whatever that will predict things that don't happen, and then they continue doing them. They're doing it. They're charlatans. They're doing it with knowledge, and I think that's a very sad, dangerous thing. All right. But at any rate, the point is with these beasts, that even though there's some disagreement even within the preterist community in terms of who they are, typically the first beast is referred to as Caesar Nero, I think for very good reason. A book you might want to check out that I read recently, and I apologize, I can't remember the title of the book, but J.D. King, his initials, J.D. King. If you put him on Amazon or something, put J.D. King and Nero, J.D. King the Beast, I'm sure it would come up. But he does a really good job, I think, and a very compelling argument that the beast is largely referring to Caesar Nero. Also, J.D. King wrote another book, Why You've Been Duped into Thinking the World is Worse Than It Is. The title, something like that, but really effective. Again, one of the things I want to do on this channel is highlight resources that have helped me. So you might want to check out some of J.D. King's work. Other preterists think that both beasts really refer to the Sanhedrin and or the high priests, and you can come up with some good reasons for that as well. But the point is, hey, we do not need to worry about these characters. They're in the past, and of that, we should be glad. And so, let me just read a couple things that are interesting about Caesar Nero. And one of the things, and you may have heard of the Tetragrammaton, and that is the idea of the 666 and how that lines up with his name. I'm not going to get into all that, but I just want to mention a few things about Nero that you may or may not know. Rats. I've got some notes here. Just trying to grab my place. Yeah, with Nero, absolute tyrant. He was called a beast. He killed several members of his own family, including kicking his pregnant wife to death. Lovely. He had some unorthodox fetishes, let's say. In my last video on the Whore of Babylon, I mentioned the Bible is not G-rated. Now, this is not from the Bible per se, but it's about Nero. One of the things he would do is he would clothe himself with animal skins and run around the arena where gladiators fought, biting the genitals of men and women tied to posts. I can barely even say it. Can you say disgusting? That is our good friend Caesar Nero. Again, Revelation also talks about, 5 have been, 1 is, and another will come and only reign shortly. That many people believe, if you line up the Caesars, who are also known as kings, that Roman Nero, Caesar Nero would have been the 6th, and he lines up there. But again, there's some disagreement to that. I tend to hold to the Nero view, and the second beast, being Jerusalem, and they're basically encouraging. They're in bed with Rome, is the idea there in terms of how these beasts are connected. Why didn't John just tell his audience outright? Why didn't he just say who these people were? Well, it could very well have been that he was concerned that the Romans would have seen some of these letters and they would have known who these people were. That may have also been why the Apostle Paul kept the identity of the man of lawlessness at bay. Clearly, Paul said in 2 Thessalonians, you know who this man is. And so this was not somebody to be thousands of years later, but they had a reason to conceal their identity for the purposes of keeping them safe. I think we can understand that he was doing that. Some of the things we read in those verses in Revelation, talking about these 10 heads, it's commonly known that Rome had 10 provinces, each ruled by a king. That may have been where the 10 crowns came from, and that Rome was a city on 7 hills. Again, the Caesar, incidentally, was often referred to as King of Kings, since he was the one king over the 10 kings of the provinces. Does that language sound familiar? King of Kings and Lord of Lords? You see, the Christians were persecuted because they claimed that Jesus was King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and not Caesar Nero or any other Caesar. The Romans didn't really care for that too much. Romans were comfortable with a pantheon of gods, but they just wanted to make sure, like, you could even worship Jesus, but make sure you worship these guys too. And Christians were saying, no, we can't, and that was the problem. So that, for the first beast, for me, a strong case can be made for Nero. I know others disagree. Beast number 2, not as much agreement here. This may refer to either Gessius Florus, the procurator or governor at the time of Nero, or possibly to the high priest of Jerusalem or the Sanhedrin, which was essentially the Jewish Supreme Court, is how we might think about it. In either case, they would encourage people to bow to Nero and honor the Roman Empire. Okay? Now, some of you might be thinking, wait a minute, why would they do that? I mean, that the Jews, they would never encourage other Jews to venerate Caesar. Why would they do that? Have you heard the phrase, we have no king but Caesar? Who was uttering that? Yeah. So they were really in bed with the Jews. So regardless of who this second subordinate beast was, if these beasts are in the past, again, you don't need to worry about either one being in your future. Have there been, or will there be other beasts, bad leaders that do awful things to people? I don't think I need to give you the answer for that. But any of the beasts that we might see down through history or in the future are not the beasts written about in Revelation. Again, referring specifically to things happening at that time. Well, let me go now to the mark of the beast. Now, this is so so important, and we see all these different ideas. I remember when I was younger in grocery stores, some of you will remember this if you're fairly contemporary with me, when grocery stores started putting the scanning or the barcodes in for their products. That might be the mark of the beast. And then after that, it was computers, and then there was going to be a computer chip. Then it was going to be when you had, like certain places you put your hand to identify yourself. That was the mark of the beast. Most recently, the COVID vaccine. On and on and on it goes. Well, again, if Revelation was written prior to AD 70 and prophesying events to take place in that time, then it cannot also be prophesying events in our time. And even if Revelation was written at a later date, because of the time statements, it still would have had to refer to something happening soon, which would have included the mark of the beast. Okay, so whatever the mark of the beast was, it's not something any of us need to be concerned about. Although actually, it is. Say what? Allow me to explain, or more importantly, allow me to have the Bible explain. Now I'm going to go ahead and start this, and I may need to go into another video for time, we'll see. But I want to go ahead and get started. Revelation 13, 15 through 18. Revelation 13, 15 through 18. The second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or their foreheads, so they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has insight calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. That number is 666. Now, I am an Iron Maiden fan, and I cannot read this without hearing Bruce Dickinson's voice reading this passage, and then by the way, that song's in 5/4. Not many rock songs are. Pretty cool. Pretty cool song. At any rate, Revelation 13, 15 through 18. Now, as previously stated, no universal agreement on who the second beast is, regardless of what end times view. Many of those who hold to a fulfilled view of Revelation posit the second beast I mentioned could be Gestus Florus, Nero's sidekick, or possibly the Sanhedrin, or specifically the high priest. But regardless, it's important to see the connections in the passage I just read. Okay, it speaks of people not being allowed to buy or sell unless they had the mark of the beast. Then we learn the mark of the beast could be determined by those who had wisdom. We already discovered that it is very likely the first beast, who was Nero. But what would be the connection between Nero and buying and selling? And again, some of this is a bit speculative, but I think a good case can be made. Have you looked at a coin lately? Maybe you haven't, because we usually just use our plastic cards. But are there people's images on coins? Or paper bills, for that matter? Well, of course. It was the same way in Rome. Nero's image was on the coins they used to purchase things. Now, notice earlier in this passage that people were to worship the image of the beast. I believe the author of Revelation is telling us that only those who were willing to bow to Caesar Nero as King of Kings and Lord of Lords were granted the ability to buy and sell, or to do a business, to purchase what they needed, to sell their wares, etc. They had many trade guilds at that time. Christians would not bow down to Nero because for them Jesus was King of Kings and Lord of Lords. There's speculation there may have been some sort of actual mark, perhaps ash, that would be put on the forehead or right hand of those who worshipped Nero, and that mark would let the merchants know who they could do business with. Whether or not there was an actual mark, we also need to realize the spiritual significance. Here is a helpful verse. Then I looked, and there before me was the Lamb, standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. Now I'm at a point here, I don't edit these videos. Some of you are thinking you might want to, but at this point anyway, I'm not doing that. And I don't want to, I think if I go on here, this is going to get a little bit too lengthy. I don't want the content to get bogged down. So what I'm going to do is stop this video. We'll come back and do a second video where we'll begin focusing a little more on the mark of the beast. I think that's going to be a good way to do it. And they're my videos. That's what I'm doing. At any rate, thanks again. Please, if this content's helpful to you, let me know that. Get this out to people who would disagree with our end times views. It's good to engage with them, and that's where we need to get this message out. I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way, and maybe some of you can pray about this. Maybe you can help me, but I think it is so important to get this fulfilled view out to people who have never heard it before, and really even focusing just on let's place the end times. Let's place the last days where they properly belong. And I keep, you see these videos with thousands and tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views, by usually pastors who, I'm sorry, in this particular area are preaching complete rubbish or garbage. They're making stuff up because it's the only thing you can do if you're predicting how things might happen that already happened. By necessity, you are making things up. Okay, and it really bothers me. I hope it bothers you, because so many are being deceived by this garbage teaching. And so, at any rate, if you can figure out a way to help me do that, I don't even care if it's me, but how can we get some of this information out to a bigger audience? I'm all for it. But I'm going to go ahead and close this video down. Again, next time we'll start with the mark of the beast and get into that, because even though, like I said earlier in this video, I mean, in one sense, it doesn't matter at all. It's something from the past. There's a spiritual element of this that really is important for us to see and embrace today. So with that, Pastor Joel saying bye for now.